In a small town, where winding cobblestone streets led past houses with faded tile roofs, lived a woman named Lynn. Every morning, as the sunlight filtered through the thin curtain of her small room, Lynn sat quietly on an old wooden chair, staring at a broken mirror hanging on the wall. The mirror was no longer whole, just jagged shards remained, reflecting her face in a distorted, fragmented way. But Lynn didn't dare throw it away. She feared that if the mirror disappeared, she'd have nothing left to face herself with. Lynn was once full of life. She dreamed of faraway journeys, of paintings she would create, and of a warm, loving family. But 10 years ago, a single mistake changed everything. She let anger take over and spoke harsh, bitter words to the mother she loved most. They argued, and her mother left, carrying with her an unspoken sorrow. Just a few months later, she died in an accident, leaving Lynn with a wound that would never heal. Since then, Lynn had lived like a shadow, locking herself away in a room filled with memories. Each day, she worked at a small grocery store, where the smiles of customers only deepened her loneliness. She packed boxes of cookies, stacked cans of milk, but her eyes were always empty, as if her soul had been trapped somewhere in the past. The broken mirror in her room was the only thing she dared to look at, because it reflected exactly how she felt, a shattered person, undeserving of forgiveness. One afternoon, as a light drizzle blurred the window, Lynn heard a knock on the door. It was Mai, the 15-year-old neighbor, the only person in town who seemed unafraid of Lynn's cold gaze. Mai stepped in, her wet shoes leaving trails of water on the floor. She held a small bouquet of wildflowers, their purple petals trembling as if hastily picked from the hillside. "Lynn, look. I picked these from the hill behind our house. Aren't they pretty?" Mai beamed, her eyes shining. Lynn glanced at the flowers, but her eyes quickly drifted back to the broken mirror. "Yes, pretty," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper, emotionless. Unlike the others, Mai didn't leave. She sat down on the floor and began chatting about little things, her cat, a test she had just flunked, her dream of becoming a writer. Lynn listened, but her heart remained heavy. She wondered why Mai was here, why this girl didn't see her as someone unworthy of conversation. When Mai finally stood up to leave, she looked at the broken mirror and said, "Lynn, why don't you get a new one? That one looks so sad." Lynn froze. She wanted to say that the mirror was all she deserved, but the words stuck in her throat. She just shook her head, and Mai left, the bouquet resting on the table. That night, Lynn lay in bed, pale moonlight drifting in through the window. She thought about Mai's words, about the mirror, and about herself. A vague question crept into her mind. Was there anything worth changing, or would she forever live with these fragments? In the days that followed, Lynn began to notice Mai's presence like a strange breeze in her life. Each afternoon, the girl came by, bringing stories or little gifts, a dry leaf, a smooth stone from the riverbank. Lynn didn't admit it, but those moments brought her a fleeting warmth. Still, each time Mai left, the darkness inside Lynn surged back, stronger than before. One evening, as the town glowed under soft golden lights, Lynn decided to clean her room. She opened an old wooden box, where she kept her mother's mementos, a hand-embroidered handkerchief, an unfinished letter, and a photo of the two of them smiling under a tree. As she looked at the photo, Lynn felt her heart tighten. She remembered the last words she said to her mother, sharp and painful. "You never understand me," she had screamed, not knowing it would be their final conversation. Lynn sank to the floor, clutching the photo. "I'm sorry, Mom," she whispered, but the words vanished into the air. She looked at the broken mirror and saw her warped face in the shards. "I don't deserve forgiveness," she told herself, her voice trembling. The next day, Mai came again, this time holding a small notebook. "Lynn, I wrote a story. Will you read it?" she asked, eyes hopeful. Lynn took the notebook, flipping through the pages. It was about a bird with a broken wing, unable to fly, but still trying every day to find the light. When she reached the part where the bird was lifted by a gust of wind, Lynn smiled unconsciously. "You write beautifully, Mai," she said, her voice softer than usual. "Do you think the bird forgave itself?" Mai asked, looking Lynn in the eye. The question struck like a blade to Lynn's heart. She wanted to answer, but her throat tightened. I don't know, she said, turning away. Mai didn't press further. She simply said, I think the bird will find a way. Because it deserves to. Then she left the notebook on the table and walked out. That night, Lynn read the story again. Every word tapped gently on her heart. She thought of the bird, of herself, and of the broken mirror. A quiet fear surfaced. If she didn't face the past, would she be forever trapped in this darkness? Time passed, and Lynn began to feel a small change inside. Her talks with Mai, the girl's stories, had planted a fragile seed of hope. But the past remained a towering wall, and Lynn still didn't know how to climb over it. One morning, while organizing goods at the store, an elderly woman walked in. She wore a worn sweater, her eyes gentle but filled with memory. Are you Lynn? She asked, her voice warm. Lynn nodded, a bit surprised. Yes, and you are? I'm a friend of your mother's, the woman said, pulling a small box from her bag. She asked me to keep this. Said one day you'd need it. Lynn opened the box, her heart pounding. Inside was a small round mirror with an intricately carved wooden frame, and a note in her mother's handwriting. Lynn, you are my light. Never forget that. Tears spilled down Lynn's cheeks, dripping onto the note. She held the mirror close, feeling as if her mother were right there, embracing her like in the old days. I hurt her, Lynn whispered, voice choked. I don't deserve her love. The old woman placed a hand on Lynn's shoulder. Your mother never thought that. She loved you, even when you fought. Forgiveness isn't about erasing mistakes. It's about allowing yourself to live again. Those words blew like a strong wind, sweeping the dust from Lynn's heart. But when she returned home, she still faced the broken mirror. She held the new mirror from her mother but didn't dare look into it. She feared that even with a new one, she'd still see someone shattered. That night, a violent storm swept through the town. Wind howled past the windows, and a loud crash rang out. Lynn startled awake and ran to the corner of the room. The broken mirror had fallen, shattering into tiny glittering pieces on the floor. Lynn dropped to her knees, hands trembling as she picked up the fragments. What do I do now? She whispered, as if asking herself. The next morning, Mai arrived, eyes worried. Lynn, are you okay? I heard the storm last night. Lynn looked at the girl, then at the pile of shards. I don't know, Mai. I think I need to start over. Mai smiled and took her hand. Then let's begin. I'll help you. After the storm, Lynn stood before the shattered remains of the old mirror. She decided not to keep them. She swept them away and hung the new mirror from her mother on the wall, though she still couldn't look into it. Each day, she spent time with Mai, listening to the girl's stories, and little by little, she began to share about her mother and the years spent drowning in regret. One afternoon, Mai pulled Lynn out to the field behind the town. Lynn, have you ever drawn again? She asked. Lynn shook her head. Not since my mother passed. I didn't think I could anymore. Mai pressed a pencil and a sheet of paper into her hands. Just try. Just once. Lynn hesitated, then sat under the tree and began to sketch. She drew a woman standing before a mirror, not a broken one, but a whole mirror, reflecting a soft, gentle light. When she finished, Lynn burst into tears. She realized that the woman in the drawing was herself, not shattered, but healing. You draw so beautifully, Mai said, hugging Lynn. See? You're still you. That night, Lynn stood before the new mirror. She took a deep breath and looked in. For the first time in 10 years, she saw her face clearly, not distorted, not broken. She smiled, and in that moment, she felt her mother's love like invisible arms around her. As time went on, Lynn began to draw again, sharing her art with the town. She held a small exhibition, telling the story of the broken mirror and the journey of forgiving herself. When a visitor asked what helped her through it, Lynn simply looked toward the distant field where Mai was playing and said, "A little girl reminded me that even though I was once broken, I still deserve to be loved." Lynn's story didn't end with a grand triumph. She didn't become a famous artist, nor did she erase her past. But she learned to forgive, not just the mistakes, but her imperfect self. And every morning, as the dawn shone through the curtain, Lynn looked into the new mirror and saw a woman who was living, healing, and slowly finding her light again. What did you learn from this story? Hope to see you in the next video. I will tell the same story but with an even more surprising ending. Please like, share and subscribe to my channel.